Don't feed the trolls. Hello everyone, I'm Father Aaron. Welcome to
The Dungeon Minister!
Last we checked in, the party had returned from their journey up to Hrothgar's Eyes. I'm gonna miss doing that. Anyway, they had returned from that journey. They had reported to the mayor and the other important citizens of Honeywood the news of the presence of werewolves and, a dragon and all of that. They told them about their journey, and they had come back, bringing with them Torek, the dwarf, and they'd returned to Honeywood. They are now awaiting the return of the boat that normally goes between Honeywood and Kilmarnock, taking the Honeywood's famous honey ale down to Kilmarnock, down to the Leather Tankard Tavern, and bringing back the empty barrels to be refilled. They're waiting for that boat to come back so that they can borrow it and get down to Kilmarnock faster. They have to get down there quickly because Fauxfire is starting to show signs of lycanthropy. She is anxious, restless, and hungry. She wants meat. Doesn't want anything else, just meat. And she's beginning to be belligerent, short with people. She's starting to be angry. It is beginning to affect the way she behaves, her, relationship with the rest of the party. It's beginning to show itself. So they know they're on the clock. And of course, 1 month isn't a fixed time in things like this. It's around a month. So I know when it'll trigger. I know when it will become permanent, but they don't. And so they're anxious. They need to get her to a cleric. A high enough level cleric, according to BECMI, a high enough level cleric, 11th level or higher, can cast Cure Disease, and it will cure lycanthropy. The clerics in Honeywood are 4th level and under, so they don't have any hope of curing it. They've got to get to Kilmarnock, the nearest big city. The boat is not anticipated in until the next day at the earliest, because the mayor has said there are troubles with the lizard men in the swamp area and all along the waterways. All along the waterways of Kilmarnock and the area of Kilmarnock, the Reach, the northern part of the kingdom. There's trouble with the lizard men all through those waterways. And so the boat might be delayed. It might never come back. Now, it goes with an armed guard, of course, but they're a little worried. In the interim, as they wait, Torek, first of all, says that he is going to head back to his homeland among the dwarves. He's giving up the idea of finding a mine up in Marnock's Teeth is just too dangerous. And he says,
if you ever come to the Dwarven Realm, please find me. Find my family. They'll know. If you ask around for Torek, eventually you'll find my family. I would like to show you the hospitality of the dwarves for everything you've done for me.
So that's nice. They've got a friend over in the Dwarven Realm, and that'll probably come up again. And while they are waiting, they bring the axe and the bow to Sulix to see if he knows anything. And they ask Rupert, does he know anything about these markings? They ask anyone they can, do you know what this is? The bow of Sigmund, didn't actually belong to Sigmund. He lived 2,000 years ago, right? But it was a magic item created in his honor. It is a bow +1 against dragons, which, again, is going to turn out to be handy. It has no magic against any other kind of creature, but it is a good bow. It's a long bow, so it has greater range than the short bows that Fleetwood and Touchberry have. It's got a greater range, and, against dragons, it's going to be a bonus. The axe. The axe has written on it some strange characters which they cannot read, and Sulix is able to discern them. He's able to read the sort of arcane alphabet that it's written in, and it says Brosingas. Brosingas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Brosingas. It means fire. Okay, fire. Well, good to know, I guess. Sulix can't tell them anymore. He can't identify, what powers the axe has. They know as players that it's magic, because every time Bob Johnny uses it, he'll roll, and I'll tell him to add 1 to the damage roll. But they can't, as characters, they can't figure out what it is. They know it's magic, they know it's powerful, but they don't know any more than that. Within 2 days, the boat does arrive back. They did not meet any direct resistance from the lizard men, but they did feel their presence around. They could hear them. They saw signs of their presence. The lizard men like to put poles in the ground with a skull on top. That's sort of one of their symbols of warning. Their symbols of, this is our territory, back off, that kind of thing. So, the boat does arrive within a couple of days, and the mayor has given them use of the craft. There's a great deal of fondness for this party in Honeywood. These two elves, this halfling and this thief, who have come there and helped defend the town when it was attacked. There are some grumblings among certain people that that attack would not have happened if the party hadn't disturbed the kobolds and gnolls to begin with. Others point out that the attack would eventually have happened, and maybe it happened a little earlier, but at any rate. The mayor also sends along a pilot, someone to actually steer the boat and use the boat, because none of the characters are really boatmen or anything. So he gives them a pilot, the use of a pilot for the trip there and back. They're going to be the guards on the way down. On the way back, some of the town guard from Honeywood, the village guard from Honeywood, who are down in Kilmarnock, will be returning on the boat coming back. They had other business down there, purchasing weapons. They're trying to upgrade the village militia. So they're going to be coming back, and they will provide the guard on the way back. Of course, the adventuring party is welcome to use the boat on the way back as well, as long as they're ready to come back in time, if they've found the cure and it has been accomplished in time. So, 2 days after they arrive home to Honeywood, they're back on the road, or on the river, heading to Kilmarnock. On the way down, they sail a familiar route now that they've gone down a couple of times, one to get to Heremod's tomb, the Barrow-Wight's tomb, and the other time to go to Kilmarnock. They sail a familiar route, and they do see evidence of lizardmen. Again, the posts in the ground with the skulls on it, the edges of the rivers worn away where they enter and exit the water, things like that. And so they're seeing evidence of a certain amount of activity, but they don't run into any direct opposition. So down they go. They reach Kilmarnock within the 2 days, day and a half to 2 days that the river journey takes, camping out in the middle of it. All the while, Fauxfire is continuing to experience these symptoms and this sort of restless anger and anxiety. They get down to Kilmarnock, and they go to the Leather Tankard, which is the sort of tavern of choice, the pub of choice in the city, and where they already know people, they have an established relationship, there's a connection to Honeywood, so that's just where they go. And they take rooms there. They do little else other than sort of checking in and saying, we're going to stay here, and they immediately head over to Marnock's cell, for which the city is named. It is the pilgrimage place, the great church built over the cell, the old monastic cell of Marnock, the hero from 2,000 years ago who came into this area and who drove out the sort of human sacrificing cult that had existed here. At any rate, they go to his shrine, which is an enormous building. It's that and the Count's Palace here in Kilmarnock are the biggest buildings that the characters have ever seen. The keep is a minor thing compared to these. This is a huge, huge structure. A large vaulted area with all sorts of little side chapels off it in the inside, and at one end a massive tower that rises above the city. Under the tower there's 3 huge archways. I've based this building on the City Hall of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm from, and so it's basically the Milwaukee City Hall, without the clock, though. Anyhow, they enter in through these arches. During the middle of the day, the place is just open. People come and go. People go in to pray. They go in seeking healing, etc., etc., etc. So they walk in. Through the crowds of, the ordinary merchants and peasants and whoever is coming in, they can see here and there figures dressed all in long black robes. These are the acolytes. These are clerics. These are people who serve in this particular religious place. So there are actual clerics, as in the character class, the fighting characters, the fighting clerics. There are monks. There are other sorts of people here. They approach one, a young woman, and they ask about healing. They say they need to see a senior member of the establishment. They need to see someone with powerful healing abilities. Now, this is an in-game thing, right? To say that someone is an 11th level cleric, that's a game mechanic, so the characters wouldn't talk that way. And Menser even points out that you shouldn't say, I'm a 3rd level, you should use the title that goes with that level. I've drawn it back even from there. I don't have my characters using those titles because how would you know? How would you know when you advanced? I mean, the spellcasters a little more. They get another level of spells. They learn more spells, but that would be far more organic in a real setting, right? That would be something that would happen naturally and organically. It wouldn't stair-step. So anyhow, they say they need to find a high, a very powerful spellcaster, a very powerful healer. So the cleric calls over one of the others, and these are essentially the junior team, right? And that's why they have duty down, tour guide duty, and don't touch that kind of duty down in the church area. She calls over another one, and he runs up to the tower. He said, "Okay, I'll fetch someone." And he goes up to the tower, and comes back with a very tall, thin man, painfully thin, a gaunt face and a rather large nose, and sort of bright eyes squinted up behind heavy spectacles. Now, glasses are not widespread in my world. There aren't people wearing glasses all over the place. But he has a pair of thick glasses, and he squints at them. "Hello, my name is Zeno. I am one of the clerics here. What do you seek?" Okay, Zeno, they speak to him, and at first, my middle guy, Touchberry is growing to be a rather impetuous, dare I say, rude character. He's getting a little, pugilistic. Fleetwood calms Touchberry down and speaks very respectfully to Zeno and says, "Our friend is very sick. We have fought werewolves, and she was bitten and she was scratched, and we think she has contracted the disease. In fact, she's beginning to show symptoms. It's been around 2 weeks since we had the battle, and she is now showing symptoms. And we are seeking healing for her. None of the rest of us are showing any symptoms, so we believe we're okay, but she's clearly sick." And at this point, Fauxfire, she's twitching all the time, and she hears noises, and they startle her, and she's starting to act very animal. And my wife did a good job of this. She was, kind of getting into it well, I'm snapping at him, and I swat him out of the way, as the cleric tried to come and observe, swat him out of the way. So the cleric inspects her, just sort of observes her and watches her and says, Yes, this is definitely lycanthropy. Unfortunately, I do not have the spells prepared today. Can you return tomorrow? And they say, yes, we can return tomorrow, any time. What time? She says, as soon as you can in the morning. I will prepare those spells. I will meditate and pray for those spells tomorrow. This will not come without cost, however. We may ask of you a boon, a favor, in return for this healing. Okay, fine. Whatever we need to do, we'll do. They head back to the leather tankard, and they have an evening meal. Steak, uncooked, for Fauxfire. Everyone else has a normal meal, and they bed down. At any rate, the next day they get up. They have a breakfast. Are you satisfied? I called it breakfast. And they head back to the temple. Once there, they again locate one of the junior clerics, who then goes and brings Zeno down. And Zeno comes, in all his grandeur. Zeno, by the way, in addition to the black robe that they all seem to be wearing, has around a chain that indicates some sort of title and rank, and he also has a large purple flowing cape that he wears. Anyhow, he approaches, and he says, come to the side chapel with me. And they go off to one of the side areas along this. The central body of the church heads toward a main sort of altar and a site of a shrine. There's actually down below the cave in which Kilmarnock would have lived, but the altar's been placed on top of that. But off to the side there are various chapels, and he, just for surprise, he takes her over there, and he begins the spell, the cure disease spell. And I like to elaborate and describe, what the gestures are. I mean, when Bob Johnny casts Magic Missile, I talk about you speak the arcane words and make the motions, and the arrow appears in air, and you direct it and it flies, that kind of stuff, right? So I describe as he casts this spell. He begins muttering words that you don't understand in a language you've never heard, and as he mutters and moves his hands around over you. An aura and a glow begin as almost vapor trails behind his hands as he moves them, and warmth begins to suffuse you, and it moves through your body and down to your toes and back up again, and you feel like you're being almost burned from inside, and there is pain. It hurts as it happens. But as that warmth comes back up and releases through the top of your head, you feel exhausted, but you feel whole, and those impulses, those fears, those anxieties, that anger is gone, and you have peace. The healing is accomplished. Now, Zeno turns to the group and says, "I have for you a task." Okay, they knew. There was a payment involved. What is it? "There has been news from one of our small villages, the village of Fenwick, that a local farmer has gone missing, an upstanding member of the community, a very successful and wealthy farmer. His family is here in Kilmarnock. They have lost touch with him. The residents of the village say he has been missing for some time. His horses were found running scared and wild in the fields, and they have seen strange figures lurking around his property. They are too afraid to investigate." And now the players start talking. Oh, this must be the lizard men, right? Because the lizard men are down here attacking everywhere. That's who it is. We'll get them. We'll show them. Lizard men are no big deal. We can take a bunch of lizard men. Great. So they ask for directions to Fenwick, and the cleric gives them, it's down this road, past this village, and then, blah, 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 blah. Off they go. It's still early in the morning, so off they go. They take the road out of Kilmarnock, and we have some fun describing the city streets as we go, and the shops, and people trying to sell them things as they walk by, and then out through the gates. Once they get through the gates, the mood changes. Inside the city, where there are walls, where there is a regular city guard, things are pretty relaxed. Out in the countryside, they begin to sense fear. There's less traffic than they had seen in the past. There's less wagon traffic back and forth. Nobody is traveling just for fun. And the people they do see on the road are armed. Now sometimes they're farmers, so they're bringing a pitchfork with them, which they would have left at home normally, but they've brought it with. Or maybe they have a big stick, a big cudgel of some kind. They're traveling armed, and they're nervous. And every once in a while they see soldiers of the Count, a troop of them marching down the road, or 2 or 3 of them standing at an intersection. When they go into the villages, there is a martial feel. There is a feel of a military presence in the streets, and almost all of the buildings they see are boarded up, as if people are preparing for a hurricane or something. They are tense, and they are worried. They're afraid. Everywhere where there's a river or stream, and on the map I have the main river that comes down from Honeywood, but there are smaller tributaries throughout this area. Everywhere where there is a water source like that, people are on edge. Now, they get down the road a ways, and they come to an intersection, and there's a little knot of soldiers there, and they ask, which way to Fenwick? Because they've kind of gotten to the end of the cleric's directions. They get there, and the soldiers say, "Oh, Fenwick's down that way." And so they peel off of the main road and head toward a village which isn't on my main map. I've only put the sort of largest population centers. Fenwick is very small. They head down this road, and it's very rustic. It's very, it's not a major road at all. And they're getting further and further away from rivers and streams. There's no flowing water through here at all. Fenwick has a well rather than stream access. So they eventually come to this little town, and it's a couple dozen buildings, right? It's very small. And something they've noticed here, as the further they get from Kilmarnock, the fewer square houses they see. The houses in this area are old roundhouses, which reflects an earlier phase of culture, an earlier phase of development. And so all of the houses in this village are all roundhouses. And so they come in, and there's just, again, about a dozen of them clustered around here, there. And they come into what would be the center of the town. It's a sort of open space. And there's the well, and there's no one around. No one at all. Well, of course, it's the middle of the day. This is a farming community. They're in the fields. So they start looking for someone to talk to because they need to be able to find this house. Eventually, they do find someone. As they walk through the village looking for another living soul, out of one of the houses comes a woman, and she's got some, like rugs, and she's shaking them out kind of thing. She's doing some cleaning or whatever. And as she comes out, she spots them. She looks at them a little warily because, elves and halflings don't show up in Fenwick that often, and they are all very well armed, so, But they're not lizard men, so, that's a plus. They approach her and they say, "Ma'am, we have been sent to investigate the disappearance of a local farmer. We were told that someone in this village has gone missing and we've been asked to investigate." "Oh, yeah. I don't know why she has a sort of bad Cockney accent, but anyway. "Oh, yeah, he disappeared some weeks ago. We've actually got his horses in the barn back there. I don't know if the family wants them or not. I don't know if he's coming back. Got no idea. Weird happenings in that house, though. Weird happenings." "Well, what do you mean, weird happenings?" "Oh, I see shadowy figures out there. Don't go that end of the village too much, 'cause don't have no business down there, but bad business. Bad business." "Okay, bad business. What do you mean, shadowy figures?" "I only seen it once. I was visiting my friend Maud. She lives just across the road from him, and Maud's a good soul. She's been living in her house now for 30 years. Her husband died about 20 back ago." Okay, we don't need to know about Maud. "What figures?" "Like I said, only saw it once. Big dark shape moving between the house and the barn. Creeped me right out. Didn't want anything to do with that. Came home as soon as I could. I came home, I locked my door, and I said to my good sir, I said, you get down your club, and you be ready, because I don't know." Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. Could you point us to the house?" She points them toward the edge of the village, sort of the opposite side that they had entered from, as the village sort of peters out into the fields. And first of all, they do learn the man's name was Robert. Robert was the man who's disappeared. And Robert's farm was actually one of the more prosperous. He was a very successful farmer. He has a good number of fields under his control. So he's out near the edge there where all the fields are. So they head out that way. As they approach, they see the roundhouse with its big conical thatched roof. The door is hanging slightly ajar. In the yard around the house, they can see a garden, which is overgrown with weeds. It looks like a couple of weeks at least, maybe 3 or 4 weeks of weeds have been allowed to grow. And there are chickens wandering here and there, trying to scratch out some food. They're hungry. They go around to the side of the house to look at the garden more closely, and it is indeed overgrown. And they see the chicken coop and a large jar with a lid on the top, and they open that up, and it's full of birdseed with the chicken coop, and so they grab some birdseed and throw it on the ground. I put it in there in case they wanted to feed the birds, and that was like the first thing they did. They see the chickens and they want to feed them because they're clearly hungry. Anyway, they go to check out the house itself. Weapons drawn. They call Robert. "Robert, are you there?" No answer. And they very gingerly open the door and look in. They can't see much. It's quite dark. There aren't really a lot of windows here. And in they go. They've lighted a lantern, and in they go. The room is a mess. There was a table and some chairs. There were shelves. There was a chest full of, sort of equipment and clothing and that kind of thing. All a mess. Things overturned. It looks as if an enormous fight had happened here. This whole house is divided in two by a wall that runs down the center, and there's a doorway with just a sort of a curtain hanging over it, a piece of cloth hanging over it to divide the two rooms. They go through that door. There they find a sort of combined storage room bedroom. There are barrels all along the wall. These are filled with grain from the harvest, although the harvest was thin this year because it came so early because of the cold. There's a box there also with some items in it, farm implements, some of them, but mostly, again, storing food and things like that. The bed is just a mess. It's been torn to pieces. At the head of the bed, on the floor just by the head, there is a small metal chest of some kind. But, most astonishingly, on the wall behind the bed is an enormous line of claw marks dug into the plaster. Something dreadful happened here. As they look at the bed, they discover that what they thought was the red coverlet, the red blanket on it, was in fact a gray blanket, stained red. Things aren't looking good for Robert. They find nothing else in this room. They leave the chest alone. This is not the lair of some monster, some evil creature that they've defeated. They're going to leave that alone. That belongs to Robert. And they're just going to look to see if they can figure out what happened. Clearly he was attacked. Clearly he has come to a bad end. But by whom? Was it the lizard men who did this?